literally like 10 hours before the call time, the director wrote a scene from scratch, completely new scene. Looking ahead at the schedule, we noticed that there was a day that was pretty outdoor heavy, not a whole lot of overhead shelter with heavy rain. And it seemed like the only workaround was either to swap days out or to rewrite the scene, to be indoors or safe. The way that we maximized our shoot days to get the most footage possible was shooting multiple scenes in the same lighting setup. I mean, we would set up interviews for the cast to do talking head scenes, and if we were able to knock out multiple talking head scenes in one setup, we would do it. And so often it would be, we're feeding them lines or questions from one scene, and then we're jumping to a different part of the script entirely, and it's so easy to knock out. So when you're reading the script, these talking head bits appear just like as pockets in the script, pockets of lines. And so we would knock out whole chunks of the script in a matter of like 30 minutes or something along those lines. And it was helpful because you're not having to go back to that location and set up an interview. Like in reality, those interviews are all in reaction to whatever scene they just did. It's organic, you can't script those. And so the difference between reality and our set is, in reality, they would go in, they would do the scene. Let's say that your two reality subjects are going to a store together and they're picking some things out for a party they're having that evening. So you would set up the lights for that little store shopping spree, and then you would set up for an interview afterwards. They call it an OTF or an on the fly. You would need to ask your talent those questions in the OTF setup, and they could only really relate to what just happened in the scene. You can't predict the future. And so if you need another OTF out of them following something different or in another context, you would need to set up that OTF again and do it again. In our case, obviously with everything being in a script, there really is no on the fly lines of questioning. You don't need to have them experience something before they talk about it. They're actors. I mean, you can just feed them the lines and boom, you got it. We had a very motivated crew. I don't think we had any issues with motivating anybody on our set. Everybody showed up motivated, ready to go. The one thing that we would start the top of our day with was a safety meeting. Whether it was weather related, environmental related, such as poison ivy, animals. We would also talk about some location considerations, such as we had a location where I wasn't a fan of a certain staircase on this property, and so we asked people to avoid taking that staircase. Of course, there were other ways of getting around, but that was just one thing that we talked about was, you know, don't use this staircase because it may just like break under you. So we want everyone to be safe, but just making sure that everybody knew that as producers, we had their back. If a piece of equipment got broken, it was covered by our insurance. And you know, obviously these things are all facts and we knew them in pre-production, but I think sometimes reminding people in tough moments like, hey, like it's gonna be all right. If anything happens, we got you covered. It's all good. Let's just focus on making the show, and if we need to take care of something on the back end, we can do that. The makeup of the crew was interesting. I had personally worked with, I'm gonna say, at least 80% of everybody before, meeting on different sets, things of that nature. There was a small group of people on the crew who I had not worked with before and we were strangers, but you know, we either talked during pre-pro or we met up right before we started shooting. And probably the coolest thing about the crew experience was watching those bonds be created as we're all in the trenches together. I'm not one that compares production to war. War is a completely different dynamic from production, but I think a lot of the sense of camaraderie is very similar. You are in the trenches together. No matter what happens, you are in it together. You're gonna share the good times, you're gonna share the bad times, and hopefully have a lot of fun together. As far as leadership style goes, I consider myself a field general. I like to be at the front of things, especially on set, and leading the charge. I do think that the attitude and the demeanor that I show up with every day is going to rub off on people whether I intend for that or not. I think if I show up in a shitty attitude, everybody else is gonna be like, man, what am I doing here? But if I show up with a great attitude, I think other people are gonna match that. We did a lot of preparation with the actors ahead of time. We did a whole cast table read over Zoom during pre-production. We hammered out story beats. Jackson did a really good job of making sure that the actors understood their motivations. The actors also did a fantastic job with communicating with us about things that could potentially impact their performance, questions about their motivations, questions about their wardrobe. The actors provided all their wardrobe for this, and you know, we purchased some things for them ahead of time as far as pieces of wardrobe goes, but for the very most part, the actors provided their own wardrobe, and so just exemplary communication, everybody being on the same page helped us so much as far as efficiency on set goes. Continuity was interesting. We did not have a script supervisor or anybody whose dedicated job it was to keep track of the continuity. Instead, I worked with John George, the second AD. We created a spreadsheet, and in that spreadsheet, we had photos of every actor's costume for which scene that they're in. And so we took every scene and we came up with drama days, like the days that are inside the universe of the show. And so the spreadsheet answers, what is this character wearing in this scene? It basically worked just like a grid. And every actor had access to that ahead of time. Any of the actors could have gone onto that spreadsheet and looked at what they need to be wearing in that scene. And just from a supervisory consistency standpoint, John and I would also double check that too, because people make mistakes, no one's perfect. In the whole shoot, I think we walked away with one continuity error that I would consider significant, and we were able to fix that in a second unit reshoot. And so I feel really good about being able to bring the actors into the fold a little bit and kind of make it everybody's job to maintain continuity, as opposed to having one person handle it, which we're considering that approach for season 2. We haven't decided on that yet, but I'm really pleased with how that worked out in season 1. We follow the 3-2-1 backup plan, meaning that all of our data, all of the shoot day materials, things of that nature, they exist in 3 different spots. And for me, I like to have one on my person, a copy that went with me to work every day in case we need to watch something, verify something, make some copies, what have you. One version exists on the cloud. Every single day after the shoot day, we're throwing it all up on the cloud, and then one version gets locked in a fireproof and waterproof safe. There should virtually be no data loss greater than 1 shoot day. And so if something happened on our end, we could contact the DP and get his copy, and we're thankful that the DP never gets rid of his copy. I mean, he's just like me, he saves everything. I've got everything archived from the day I started working in this industry. We were very blessed to pay $0 for locations on this shoot. That's obviously unconventional when you're talking about a film shoot. Every location around the lake was owned by someone that I have known for years, or owned by someone who was friends with those people that I have known for years. There's not a lot of production that happens in this area of the state. And so as opposed to people who live in a place like LA or Chicago, or even down in Kentucky where you're seeing more production, the community isn't jaded. They're not tired of seeing the camera trucks. In fact, they're usually pretty entertained by it, and they're very interested in the process. You know, like what are we up to? And for example, The Golden Bachelor, the first season of The Golden Bachelor, the guy actually lives on the lake, and they shot the season finale up there, and many of the Lakers got to get a taste of what production footprints look like before we got there, which I think saved us a little bit of time of having to explain certain things, and not that we would have had an issue with explaining those things, but just the fact that they were able to experience production before we got there, I think helped a lot. And the location hosts were so hospitable, the most hospitable locations I've ever been on in my entire career. They were so welcoming. They had anything that we needed for us. They have all sorts of lake adjacent props. There weren't a lot of negotiations with the location owners. It was more of like here's what we would like to do. Are we allowed to do this? And we were lucky enough that every time the answer was yes. I can't think of a single request that we had that was turned down by anyone at any location, even the non-lake locations. We shot at a bar called Wacky Jack's, and like they allowed our cast members to climb on their tables and mess with some of the stuff around the bar, and everything that we asked, the answer was yes. And recognizing that that's not always common, we are so blessed that was the case. Our biggest constraints on set were time and weather. As far as time goes, we only had 12 hours. We cannot afford overtime, and so once we hit 12 hours, that was it. And I think that we really only hit 12 hours 1 or 2 days. Most of the days we're wrapping closer to 8, 9, or 10 hours, and you know, nobody hates that, right? As far as weather goes, Indiana weather is extremely unpredictable. Anyone that's lived here knows that. You could be looking at the forecast and it looks great, and then you show up and you get rained on. Or you could see rain in the forecast and you show up and it's sunny. Or you only get rain for like 20 minutes. We had a day like that where we just got absolutely poured on for 20 minutes, 20, 30, 40 minutes, something like that. And that's how we figured out that the roof in this one location was a little leaky. So that was interesting to deal with, and definitely caused us to have to move faster throughout the rest of the day, because we lost almost, we lost almost an hour on that. So just being able to adapt to weather and time situations helped us a lot. We did have a situation where weather played into the continuity a little bit. Toward the tail end of a rainstorm, we decided to shoot a scene in which you could hear the rain outside the room, and the water was even leaking through the roof a little bit. And so we just threw in a line that was like, hey man, you might want to fix your roof sometime. And then in editing, I had them insert an establishing shot of rain coming down that we shot at a later date. The tactics that we used to keep production value high on a pretty lean budget, it really just came down to bringing in talented people who had good equipment, threw us a good deal, and just ultimately knew what they were doing. I trusted the crew explicitly. Everybody was able to do their thing with very little oversight. And when you have people who are talented and you have people with high skills, everything else is easy. When we started running low on time some days, the first thing that would get cut is extra coverage. A lot of times we would talk about getting lots of coverage on a certain scene, but at the end of the day, we had to be okay with maybe 3 or 4 takes of a scene before we move on. One day we showed up and the weather actually looked pretty good. We knew there was a chance that we could get spit on a little bit, but the chance wasn't great enough to significantly alter the day's schedule. So we just went ahead and got started, and I think that we shot one scene maybe, and then we just got absolutely dumped on. And the location owner here was not aware that his roof was leaky. And so once we gathered everybody inside, all the gear, all the props and things like that, some rain started actually getting inside. And now this is a location where it's literally just like a shed. I mean, it's smaller than this room. And so you've got 15 people crammed in here, all the equipment, all the cameras, all the lights, and then all of a sudden you start getting some rain coming down from the roof, and I think a broken skylight or something. And so it's a scramble to cover everything. We had tarps. I think we had like 50 ponchos on set that day or something, and I think every one of those ponchos got used in terms of it just like covering the props, covering the gear. I was constantly reminding everybody that the gear is covered by insurance, and that if something was damaged because of a leaky roof or rain or whatever, it would be covered and we would take care of it. Everybody handled it like a champ. I mean, we had people from G&E who were looking to patch the leaks with some of the plastic material that we had, and you know, did a good enough job that we were able to redirect a lot of the water into a couple buckets that we had. Just the fact that everybody was on point through that, and then through the rest of the day once the rain let up, that day had potential to really derail the whole shoot. That day had potential to disrupt the high morale that we had as a crew. I think that was like the second or third day we were shooting, maybe before a lot of that trust and those bonds have been built. I'm so proud of how everybody handled that. A lot of times studios have the luxury of being able to afford extra people, extra labor, such as location managers, location scouts, catering, crafty PAs. But one example of how we handled that was my mother would deliver catering every day. And she was fantastic. I think she had a great time helping out. She's always wanted to be around set. And so just the fact that we were willing to find friends and family on my end who were willing to volunteer their time and labor to help the show really was valuable to us. And then on the location scouting side and some administrative things, usually what you would have a whole department of staff doing are just things that I would handle myself, and sometimes with John's help. Line delivery from the actors is one thing that we wanted to get right constantly. Because of the nature of some of the scenes, because of how we allowed the actors to ad-lib, every once in a while they would step on each other. And even if the rest of the take was perfect, if we had actors that were stepping on each other with lines, that was something that we would look to correct in the next take. And not that they can't keep the lines. I mean, all we would say is like, you know, keep your ad-libbing and keep your improv, but just don't step on each other. You know, wait for the other person to finish so that the audio is clean. We were lucky enough to not have any major problems come up on set that demanded an immediate solution that wasn't obviously apparent to us. But I think the entrepreneurial grit comes in when you're talking about weather delays or scheduling adjustments from those weather delays. A problem that we were able to solve instantly due to weather. Looking ahead at the schedule, we noticed that there was a day that was pretty outdoor heavy, not a whole lot of overhead shelter with heavy rain. And it seemed like the only workaround was either to swap days out or to rewrite the scene to be indoors or safe. And at first I wanted to just swap the days, have it be really easy. It didn't really work out with the actor schedules that way. We had people who would have been unavailable if we needed to swap days. And so literally like 10 hours before the call time, the director wrote a scene from scratch, completely new scene. This was not a rewrite. This was a brand new scene that he wrote that took place indoors. And arguably it's one of the best scenes in the episode. And that wasn't originally part of the script. That wasn't even really like a story beat, but it worked out near impeccably in the edit. And it was a really funny scene. Not that we want all of our scenes to be written 10 hours before they're shot. We try to prepare a little bit better than that. But just the fact that we're capable of making that adjustment quickly and on the fly speaks volumes of the crew. Hey everybody, I'm Ben Richards, founder of Intravision and executive producer of Hillbilly Hoosiers. To keep up with everything that we're doing and to grab merch from our store, follow or subscribe at intravision.us or visit intravision.us. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. I had someone comment to me at Rap who was on the crew. It was like, man, this is like a vacation I took and I got paid for it. And that is in large part due to the lake environment, the party environment, how laid back everything was, the poker run, the events around the lake. We would do crew dinners.